Hello and welcome to the CAPE training program. My name is John Leatherman. CAPE is short for Community Assessment and Education to Promote Behavioral Health Planning and Evaluation. This training and related activities was sponsored by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the USDA network of Regional Rural Development Centers. The objectives of the program are to enhance behavioral health literacy by offering the Mental Health First Aid Workshop with an emphasis on substance abuse. Our second objective is to motivate the creation of community coalitions to address local behavioral health needs, such as those related to the opioid epidemic. Finally, we are encouraging the notion of formal action planning to create a community roadmap for improving the local situation. In this video, we'll be discussing the organization of effective public meetings and one technique that I like to use in trying to achieve group consensus over shared priorities. First, organizing public meetings. The type of meeting we're talking about is an open public meeting, attempting to draw a large and diverse group of community members and leadership. Of course, it starts by clearly articulating what needs to be accomplished. Public meetings are needed when you're trying to create awareness and enhance knowledge about an issue, building public support and momentum to achieve a goal, recruiting allies and supporters for an issue, building consensus around broader community priorities, mobilizing supporters and strategizing about action, reporting to the community the progress that has been achieved, and finally, celebrating success and reinforce momentum around a project. Elements of meeting organization include a leader with the gravitas to sway community leaders and members, a facilitator who will do the local work, a core group of supporters to help and endorse the effort, space and time conducive to professional presentation and effective work, the target audience, ideally the right people are there. Finally, a contact distribution list, including their position in the community, email address, and phone number. A program plan has clear goals and objectives about what needs to be accomplished. People like an agenda so that they know what to expect. It's a good idea to limit what is to be accomplished in a reasonable time. Make the meeting as brief as possible and as easy for people to participate. Finally, I respect participants' time by starting on time and finishing on time. Additional elements of meeting organization include publicizing some sort of a hook that makes people care. Sometimes it's useful to have an outside expert come into the community. There might be incentives to participate, such as lunch or refreshments. There is utility to having formal and personal invitations. Give people a last-minute reminder and encourage them to come. Finally, there is no substitute for beating the bushes, which is to say, publicize the opportunity as much as possible, using as many different ways as possible. Sometimes the purpose of a meeting is to create a sense of community agreement around some sort of action priority. There are many public participation techniques available for whatever needs to be accomplished. There are techniques to share information, such as briefings, expert panels, feature stories, information repositories, and others. There are techniques to compile and provide feedback, such as surveys, interviews, Delphi process, and others. There are techniques to bring people together, such as appreciative inquiry, deliberative techniques, focus groups, and others. Finally, there are techniques for group decision-making, such as the nominal group process and other consensus techniques. I won't try to go through all of these, but I did find a resource for you from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency that is available on the CAPE website. When I first came into Extension, I was taught to use the nominal group technique as a means of identifying community priorities. It is a very democratic process where ideas are solicited and people vote. At the conclusion, there is a very clear first, second, and third priority. Over time, I became dissatisfied with use of the technique because it creates winners and losers. Some 1, 2, or 3 ideas were embraced, and other ideas were rejected and left out. Some people walked away feeling disaffected by the process and would sometimes form splinter groups. Rather than bring people together, I was helping to drive people apart. Now I use a consensus building process. I call it facilitated small group discussion. It's straightforward and it can be accomplished in 90 minutes, even with large groups. Here's the way it works. This is usually the culmination of a multi-part meeting process. When it's time to make choices or decisions, we schedule a 90-minute meeting. To open, thank the participants for their continued interest and important work. Restate the purpose of the project. Outline what needs to be accomplished today. Review progress to date, including the steps taken, information reviewed, and preliminary conclusions. Depending on how many people you expect to attend, recruit some number of small group discussion leaders in advance. Arrange the room for effective small group discussion. Separated round tables with 6 to 8 people per group is ideal. People often come to meetings with co-workers or friends and tend to sit together. You want to mix people up. The best ideas are generated when people with different ideas and perspectives have a chance to interact. So have everyone count off 1, 2, 3, 4, or however many to create your discussion groups. Have people move to their designated table with their designated discussion leader. You recruit someone at each table to be a group recorder. All they need to do is to be able to listen and write legibly. Then you ask the specific question or questions to be answered. Typically, that will be some variation of, what is the priority? Tell them that now is not the time to figure out how to achieve the priority. That will come later. Focus on what the priority needs to be. As they contemplate the question, I'll typically offer some advice. I'll tell them if they hope to get anything done later, think in terms of discrete and achievable goals. Make sure whatever they come up with is within local control and requires only the resources that are available. I tell them to avoid global goals that they have no ability to influence at the community level. If a group decides it wants to eliminate government regulations, chances are they're only going to get frustrated trying. Lay out rules for small group discussion. Tell them the time limits and the progress they should be making at different time intervals. The discussion leader is in charge of the table. Their job is to be sure discussion stays on time, that everyone speaks, and that no one dominates the discussion. The recorder tries to capture everyone's thoughts as closely as possible to the way they said them. There is a round-robin opportunity for everyone to offer their ideas and a little time to discuss and lobby for different ideas. The task for each table is to come to agreement as to a small group about 1, 2, or 3, 4 things that they can all agree on as being priorities by the end of the designated time. I'll remind them of the time available and the progress they should be making in their discussion. At the end of the time, each table reports to the whole group the 2 or 3 things they all agreed were priorities. Now it's my turn to go to work. Each table reports and I record their responses. I'll repeat them back, what I heard them say, so they're satisfied that I understand correctly. The process is repeated with every small group. Then I start to think aloud and look for commonalities across the suggestions. I try to group things into broader themes or goal statements. I try to consolidate everything suggested into 1, 2, or 3 goal statements. Everything is included in one of the goal statements and nothing is left out. I offer my interpretation of the broader goal statements and ask whether everyone can agree that this is a goal. I do that 2 or 3 times. At the end, there are a discrete number of priorities and everyone is included somewhere. Nobody is left out. That's usually about as much as can be accomplished in about 75 minutes. I'll wrap things up by securing commitments that participants will now begin to think about how to get the priorities done. I'll introduce the idea of community action planning and creating a roadmap for what has to happen in order for them to accomplish their goal. I'll ask people to volunteer and make a commitment to think in advance of our next meeting. I'll try to get 2 or 3 people together to talk about each of the priorities so that they come to the next meeting with specific ideas about what needs to be done. I'll tell them that if we start from a dead stop at our next meeting, it will be hard to make sufficient progress in a short time. I make them promise to come ready to contribute ideas. So with that, I'll close for now. Next time, we'll talk about community action planning. Here is how to get in touch with us. Thank you for watching.